The sky over Central Oregon does not look like the sky anymore. It is the color of a bruise, a sickly orange and brown haze that swallows the sun and turns midday into an eerie twilight. Ash drifts down onto cars and rooftops like a dirty gray snow. The air smells of burning forest for hundreds of miles in every direction. And across the state, from the high desert of the east to the flanks of the Cascade Mountains, the land itself is on fire. Right now, Oregon is battling one of the most explosive and dangerous stretches of wildfire activity it has seen in years, with roughly 29 large fires burning at once and a scorched footprint that has already surged past 640,000 acres. That number is almost impossible to picture, so let us make it real. 640,000 acres is an area larger than many entire cities and counties combined, a swath of forest, rangeland, and canyon country so vast that if you stood at its center, you could drive for hours in any direction and still not reach the far edge of the burning ground. And it is not one single fire. It is a scattered army of them, dozens of separate blazes, some small and quickly contained, others enormous and utterly out of control, each one throwing its own towering column of smoke into a sky that has become a battlefield. In this video, we walk through exactly what is happening across Oregon right now. We will look at the largest and most destructive of these fires, the communities they are threatening, the thousands of people forced to flee, the families who have already lost everything, and the exhausted firefighters standing between the flames and the towns in their path. We will explore why this is happening and what the days ahead may hold, and most importantly, what people in the fire zones need to know to stay safe. This is a fast-moving emergency, and behind every one of those acres is a story of fear, courage, and survival. So stay with us, because understanding what is unfolding across Oregon right now matters, whether you live in the path of these flames or simply want to grasp the scale of what this state is facing. To understand this crisis, you have to picture Oregon not as a single place under threat, but as a state being attacked on many fronts at once. This is not one massive fire marching toward one town while everyone else watches from safety. It is a sprawling, statewide emergency, with fires erupting across an enormous geographic range, stretching firefighting resources to their absolute limit and forcing agencies to make agonizing choices about where to send crews and equipment when everywhere seems to need them at the same time. The heaviest destruction has fallen on Central Oregon. The high country and canyon lands east of the Cascades, where a landscape of juniper, sagebrush, dry grass, and timber has become a tinderbox. Here, several of the largest fires have exploded across the land, feeding on parched vegetation and driven by wind and heat into fast-moving walls of flame. But the danger does not stop there. Fires are also burning in the forests near the great volcanic peaks of the Cascades, in the eastern rangelands, and in scattered pockets across the state, each one a separate front in a war being fought on a scale few people outside the region truly appreciate. What makes this moment so alarming is the sheer number of simultaneous large fires. When you have roughly 29 significant blazes going at once, you do not simply multiply the challenge of one fire by 29. You create a situation where the entire firefighting system is overwhelmed, where aircraft and crews cannot be everywhere they are needed, where a fire that might normally be attacked aggressively in its first hours instead has to be left to grow because the resources are committed elsewhere. It becomes triage, a desperate effort to protect lives and homes first, while accepting that vast areas of wildland will simply have to burn. This is the reality Oregon is living through, a state genuinely under siege, with the smoke of dozens of fires merging into a single gray pall hanging over the land. Among all the fires burning across Oregon, one has grown into a true giant. The Rowe Creek Complex has swelled into one of the largest single firefighting battles in the state, charring an area that has climbed past 190,000 acres, a scale that on its own would be a major disaster in almost any year. A complex, in firefighting terms, is not one fire, but a group of them, often started around the same time by the same cause, and managed together under a single command because they burn in the same general area. The Rowe Creek Complex earned that name because it grew from multiple ignitions that spread and, in places, merged across the dry landscape of central and north-central Oregon. What began as separate flames became a sprawling, interconnected monster, racing across rangeland and timber, jumping natural barriers, and forcing evacuations across a wide area as it grew day after day. The terrain is part of what makes this fire so hard to fight. This is rugged, remote country, a landscape of steep canyons, rolling hills, dry grass, and scattered timber. Where roads are few and access is difficult, firefighters cannot simply drive up to every flank and put water on it. Much of the battle has to be fought from the air, with aircraft dropping water and retardant, and on the ground by crews working in brutal heat and thick smoke to carve fire breaks and protect the ranches and small communities scattered across the region. The Rowe Creek Complex is a reminder that in the wide open spaces of the American West, a fire can grow to a size that dwarfs entire cities, consuming a landscape faster than any human effort can hope to stop, until the weather itself finally shifts. If the Rowe Creek Complex represents the sheer scale of what Oregon faces, another fire represents its sudden, terrifying speed. The bench fire erupted and spread with frightening rapidity, driving some of the most urgent and heartbreaking evacuations of this entire emergency, striking hard at the communities around Warm Springs and the areas near Madras. Much of this land belongs to the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, a place of deep cultural significance and home to a community with generations of history rooted in this ground. When a fast-moving fire tears into a place like this, it is not just acres of vegetation at stake. It is homes. It is history. It is the physical fabric of a community's life. The bench fire changed direction and intensity with alarming speed, prompting the most severe category of evacuation order, the kind that tells people they must leave immediately, right now, with no time to gather belongings, because the fire is upon them. These go-now orders are issued only when lives are in immediate danger, and their spread across the Warm Springs area tells you everything about how unpredictable this fire became. Tragically, this fire has already taken homes. Families in the region have lost the places they lived, watched years or generations of memory reduced to ash and blackened foundations. That is the human core of this disaster, the moment a family stands at a roadblock, turned back from the only home they have ever known, not knowing whether it is still standing. The bench fire is a stark example of how a wildfire can go from a distant column of smoke to an immediate, life-threatening emergency in a matter of hours, and how the people in its path can lose everything before the day is out. Another of the blazes defining this siege pushed toward a threshold firefighters watch with dread. The Cram Fire grew into one of the most significant fires of the season, swelling across tens of thousands of acres of central Oregon and approaching the scale the fire community calls a megafire, a term reserved for the truly enormous events that consume 100,000 acres or more. Its rapid growth was a product of exactly the conditions that have made this summer so dangerous: hot temperatures, low humidity, gusty shifting winds, and a landscape of cured, bone-dry fuels. Fires like this can advance faster than a person can run, throwing embers ahead of the main front to start new spot fires that leapfrog across the land. And firefighters battling them face the constant danger of the fire jumping their lines, or the wind suddenly turning and putting crews in peril. Not all of the danger is in the open rangelands. In the forested high country near Mount Hood, the Grasshopper Fire burned through timbered slopes and forced its own evacuations as it grew past thousands of acres, even prompting orders for communities in its path. Forest fires like this present their own dangers. In heavy timber, flames can climb into the crowns of the trees and race from treetop to treetop in what firefighters call a crown fire, one of the most intense and unstoppable forms a wildfire can take. Steep, mountainous terrain adds another layer of difficulty because fire moves faster uphill and rugged ground can make it treacherous for crews to reach the flames directly. Together, the Cram and Grasshopper fires show that this crisis spans the full range of Oregon's landscapes, from sagebrush flats to alpine forests, each demanding a different approach and its own share of the limited resources available. Beyond the largest fires, this emergency is defined by a whole constellation of additional blazes, each contributing to the overwhelming total. The Hagen Fire prompted rising evacuation levels as it grew and shifted. The Hay Creek Complex added its own acreage and its own evacuations to the tally. And still more fires, some named and tracked closely, Others, smaller and more quickly handled, dotted the map across the state. Even communities not normally thought of as being in the direct path of wildfire found themselves under threat, with evacuation orders reaching into places residents might have assumed were safe. This is the true nature of the 29 large fires burning across Oregon. It is not a single villain in a single valley. It is a scattered, relentless siege, with flames erupting across an enormous sweep, each fire a separate crisis, pulling at the same overtaxed pool of firefighters, aircraft, and equipment. Add them all together, and you arrive at that staggering figure of more than 640,000 acres burned, a total that grows with each passing day of heat and wind. Behind every acre and every fire name are people, and it is their stories that give this crisis its true weight. Across Oregon, thousands of residents have been placed under evacuation orders, uprooted from their homes and thrust into frightening uncertainty. Oregon's evacuation system uses 3 levels that have become grimly familiar to those who live in fire country. Level 1 means be ready, aware that danger exists and preparing to leave. Level 2 means be set, packed and prepared to go at a moment's notice. And Level 3, the most severe, means go now, leave immediately, do not wait, your life is in danger and every second counts. This summer, all 3 levels have rippled across the state, and the most severe orders have sent families racing out with whatever they could grab in the final moments. Imagine that reality. You look out your window and see the sky glowing orange, the smoke thickening, ash beginning to fall. The alert comes through telling you to leave immediately. You have minutes to decide what matters most, to gather your children, your pets, your most irreplaceable belongings, and get out while the roads are still open. You drive away not knowing if you will ever see your home again, joining a line of frightened neighbors fleeing the same advancing threat. For some, the worst has already come to pass. Homes have been lost, families returning to find nothing but ash and rubble where their lives once stood. The loss of a home is not just the loss of a building. It is the loss of a lifetime of memories, of photographs and heirlooms, and the small, irreplaceable things that made a house a home. And for the many thousands still under evacuation orders, living in shelters, hotels, or with friends and family, there is the agony of waiting, of watching the maps and praying the flames turn away. Evacuation is not simple either, especially in rural areas where distances are great and roads are few. For the elderly, for people with disabilities, for those without reliable transportation. For families with livestock, the challenge of getting out safely can be immense, and a fast-moving fire leaves precious little margin. Standing between these fires and the towns in their path is a force of firefighters whose endurance almost defies belief. These are the men and women working brutal shifts in punishing heat, breathing smoke, hiking into rugged country with heavy gear, and putting themselves directly in harm's way to protect people they have never met. When a state faces 29 large fires at once, the demand on these crews becomes almost inhuman. Firefighting on this scale is a massive, coordinated operation. There are the hand crews cutting fire breaks with chainsaws and hand tools. There are the engine crews defending homes directly, clearing flammable material and spraying water. There are the helicopters and air tankers attacking from above where the ground crews cannot reach. There are the bulldozers carving lines, the incident commanders coordinating it all, and the vast support network feeding and sustaining the operation. But when fires break out everywhere at once, even this formidable force gets stretched thin. Crews are pulled from one fire to another as priorities shift. Resources from other states take time to arrive, and always there is the danger, because wildland firefighting is genuinely perilous work, and every crew member on those lines is accepting real risk to protect others. They are the human wall holding back the flames. And in an emergency of this magnitude, they are being tested as rarely before. It is natural to ask how a state ends up with dozens of massive fires at the same time. The answer lies in a combination of conditions that have come together this summer to create a near-perfect environment for wildfire. The first factor is the weather. Fires thrive on heat, dryness, and wind, and this summer has delivered all 3 in abundance. Prolonged heat has baked the landscape, driving down the moisture in the vegetation and turning grass, brush, and timber into ready fuel. Low humidity means little moisture in the air to slow a fire down, and wind is the great accelerant, pushing flames across the land. Carrying embers ahead to start new fires and turning a small blaze into a raging front in hours. The second factor is the landscape itself. Much of Oregon, especially the drier country east of the Cascades, is naturally prone to fire, and years of drought have left the vegetation especially parched and primed to burn. The fuels are cured and abundant, loaded with the raw material for disaster, waiting only for ignition. And then there is the spark. Many fires and outbreaks like this are started by lightning, when dry thunderstorms hurl bolts into the parched landscape without bringing enough rain to matter. A single storm can start dozens of fires in a day, which is precisely how a state can suddenly find itself with a whole constellation of new blazes at once. Behind all of this looms the larger trend scientists have documented across the West, the way a warming climate has been lengthening and intensifying fire seasons, drying out landscapes, and making large fires more frequent. Oregon's current siege is a local emergency, but it is also a chapter in a much larger story unfolding across the entire region. One of the most far-reaching consequences of a fire emergency on this scale spreads well beyond the flames, affecting people hundreds of miles from the nearest fire line. That consequence is smoke. When 640,000 acres are burning, they produce an immense volume of it, and that smoke does not stay put. It rises, spreads, and drifts on the wind across vast distances, degrading air quality over enormous areas and affecting the health of countless people who never see a flame. Wildfire smoke is genuinely hazardous. It is filled with tiny particles that can penetrate deep into the lungs and even enter the bloodstream. And breathing it can cause everything from irritated eyes and throats and coughing to far more serious effects, especially for vulnerable groups. Children, the elderly, pregnant women, and people with heart or lung conditions such as asthma are particularly at risk, and for them a heavy smoke event can be dangerous or even life-threatening. When air quality plunges into the unhealthy or hazardous range, the guidance is to stay indoors, keep windows closed, use air filtration if possible, and avoid strenuous outdoor activity. The smoke from Oregon's fires has turned skies orange and gray across the region, reduced visibility, and blanketed communities in a choking haze, a constant visible reminder written across the sky that something enormous and dangerous is happening across the state. For anyone living in or near the fire zones, knowing what to do is essential. And it can be the difference between safety and tragedy. The single most important principle is to stay informed and be ready to act quickly, because these fires move fast and conditions can change in an instant. Pay close attention to official evacuation information and take it seriously. If you reach the be ready level, start preparing in earnest, gathering important documents, medications, and irreplaceable belongings, planning your route out, and arranging for pets and animals. If you reach be set, be genuinely ready to leave at a moment's notice, with your vehicle packed and pointed toward the exit. And if you are ever told to go now, do exactly that, immediately, without hesitation, and without stopping for more things. No possession is worth your life, and the people who get hurt in wildfires are too often those who waited too long or went back for one more thing. Prepare before any order arrives. Have an emergency kit, ready with water, medications, important documents, a change of clothes, and supplies for children and pets. Know multiple routes out of your area in case the primary road is blocked. Keep your vehicle fueled during fire season, sign up for local emergency alerts, and talk with your family about a plan so that if you are separated when an emergency strikes, everyone knows where to go. For those with livestock, plan early, because moving animals takes time you may not have once a fire is close. Protect yourself from the smoke as well, staying indoors when air quality is poor. Sealing your home against the outside air, and taking special care of the very young, the very old, and those with health conditions. And look out for your neighbors, especially those who may need help evacuating, because in an emergency like this, communities survive by taking care of one another. As this emergency continues, the crucial question is what comes next, and the honest answer is that much depends on the weather. Fire seasons live and die by conditions, and the difference between a fire that keeps growing and one firefighters can finally corral often comes down to a shift in temperature, humidity, and wind. A break in the heat, a rise in moisture, a calming of the winds, or best of all a soaking rain, can give crews the opening they need. Continued heat and wind can drive further explosive growth and spawn new fires to add to the toll. Firefighters and emergency managers will keep working around the clock, prioritizing the protection of lives and homes, calling in resources from wherever they can be found, and adapting as the fires and the weather evolve. Some fires burning now will be contained in the days ahead. Others may continue to grow, new fires may erupt, and through it all, the communities of Oregon will continue the hard work of enduring, of evacuating and sheltering and supporting one another, and eventually of returning and rebuilding when the flames finally pass. It is worth remembering, even now, that Oregon and the broader West have faced fire before and have always found the strength to recover. Landscapes regrow, communities rebuild, people help one another through the worst of it and emerge on the other side. For now, though, the fires burn on. 29 large blazes, more than 640,000 acres, thousands displaced, homes lost, and a firefighting force pushed to its limits. This is one of the most serious wildfire emergencies Oregon has faced, a statewide siege of flame and smoke that has transformed the landscape and upended countless lives. Our thoughts are with everyone affected, with the families who have lost so much, with those still waiting to learn the fate of their homes, and with the brave crews on the front line. If you are in the fire zone, stay alert, stay ready, and stay safe. Listen to the officials, heed the orders, and do not take chances with these fast-moving flames. And to everyone watching, keep the people of Oregon in your thoughts as they face down one of the fiercest fire sieges in recent memory, and hold on to the hope that cooler days and calmer winds will soon bring this weary state the relief it so desperately needs.